You're watching CT22 with Eric Parker, sponsored by Hartford Healthcare.
This past week, Channel 3 chief investigative reporter Matthew Campbell looked at problems renters here in our state are now facing, and he got some insight from experts on how to get those issues resolved. Matthew is joining us right now, right here in Studio A, with some of the important takeaways from his series that went on all week long. First of all, Matthew, it was completely fascinating to see what you uncovered. And I want to start by saying that it was called Renters' Rights. And I think that was an important takeaway, is that renters in the state have rights that they may not know about. A lot of times they don't know.
Exactly, yeah, and I think that was the biggest takeaway, is that, there are options. If you are a renter out there and you're facing eviction, or if you're just having any sort of issues, there are solutions and there are avenues that you can take. And what we wanted to start on was raised rents, because this is something that I would say nearly every renter right now in the state, in America for that matter, they're facing that. Whether it's a smaller increase or a larger one, raised rents, especially in the last 12 months, have been a big problem.
And we're seeing in some cases even the doubling of rents. Is there anything anyone can do in a situation like that, when a landlord just comes to you and says, here's your new lease, this is what we're doing?
And that's something that was surprising. For this series that we did, we talked with Brian Carberry from apartmentguides.com, and he basically says, if you are a tenant, if you are a renter, you cannot avoid a rent increase when your lease is up. Take a listen.
And if a landlord sees the market pricing things at certain areas, they have the right to try to get as much as they can for a property, for a unit.
All right, so you heard that. Get as much as they can for a unit. That is well within a landlord's right to do that.
But the market has exploded. I mean, we obviously know what's happened over the past year with the housing market when it comes to buying a home. Now renters can pay astronomical amounts of money. They're being priced right out of the homes they've lived in for a long time.
Exactly. You're seeing right now, on average, nationwide, 15 to 20% increase.
Wow.
That is what renters are facing right now. So here's what you can do if you are a renter to kind of get around that. There's two avenues that you can explore. And the first is negotiating with your landlord, because Mark, the landlord wants to have a reliable tenant. They want to have a reliable tenant. And so what tenants can do is they can kind of price around, look to see what they're facing for their increase and compare it to other units nearby in their neighborhood. And if there's a big disparity, they can go to their landlord and say, hey, it's not really market comparable. And
Right.
They actually have a story from Stamford where they were facing a 20% increase, and he was able to negotiate it all the way down to 3%.
That's a very good thing to keep in mind. Go to them. Because I would think as an owner that if you even have 1 month where it's empty, or even 2 months, that's a loss of any profit you would potentially make. I mean, if it's just sitting there and you're getting nothing, or if you have to go through the eviction process.
Exactly. And another option for renters, if you're facing a rent increase, is to go to your town's Fair Rent Commission. Now, this is something that not every town in Connecticut has. I would say a little bit more than a dozen have them, but they'll do the research, they'll do the investigating and the negotiating for you as well. And a lot of times they will be successful. They might not be able to negotiate the rent down, but they can kind of prorate it.
Explain what that is, if you could, because I know you focused on that in one of your stories throughout the week. But it was fascinating to hear that, I believe it was Manchester, right? That you were in the town where they had this board where you could go to. Not everyone has that, right?
Not everyone has that, and this one was in Manchester. And what they did was they will take complaints and they will contact the landlords on your behalf, and they'll try to negotiate something to make the rent increase not as severe or as abrupt.
Now, renters also have responsibilities as well, right? So if you are in a place and you're renting, you have to pay. You have to pay on time. The landlords have some obligation, of course, to fulfill their end of the deal, but it works both ways.
Yes, definitely. And that really gets highlighted in our next segment. And that was about infestations, Mark, because there was an apartment in Hartford that was just infested with bugs. And let's actually, introduce you to the tenant right now who is living with a roach and rodent infestation.
We gotta throw it out. She just, like I said, we don't be here. We only come to lay down and sleep if we have to, if we can't sleep somewhere else.
All right, so Mark, that's obviously, that's nasty. You don't want to live in those conditions. That is a clear-cut infestation. So what do you do in that case? Okay, you can kind of work the chain of command. Go to your landlord. If they address it, great. If they don't, you go to the city. The city's going to inspect. And what they might find is that the tenant might not be holding up to their end of the bargain, because again, this relationship, the tenant-landlord relationship, it's a two-way street. You got to do what you need to do to not invite the pests in. And fines could be issued if the tenant is found at fault or if the landlord is found at fault.
What is your advice? What was your big takeaway, I think, for renters here in Connecticut and landlords as well after doing this week-long series?
I would probably say that there are options. There are options. Don't feel like it's the landlord's way or the highway, right? Because no matter what you're facing, if it's an eviction, if it's a broken item, if it's infestations, there are things that you can do to try to, remedy the situation.
They can also reach out to you as well. I know that you
Yes.
spoke with a lot of people over the past week, and if anyone missed it, we would encourage you to go on the Channel 3 app, go to WFSB.com. You can watch the entire series. I know you can also find on the Channel 3 Facebook page, each night throughout the week, you sat down with experts and took questions from people in Connecticut. You probably got a lot of great insight from people there as well.
Yes, we had live questions coming in every single night. We had a different expert every single night as well. So those conversations were able to get our viewers the answers to their problems in real time by experts that really hopefully kind of gave them some insight that they prior did not have.
Well, Matthew, I know it was, as I said, it was a very informative series, and I think for people in the state of Connecticut right here, it is something to go back and watch, especially if they have some questions and they think they're living in a situation that there's no hope. There almost certainly is hope for you.
Exactly, exactly.
All right, Matthew Campbell, thank you.
Thank you
very much.